because this is clearly, if not the most, one of the most important races to us in the Illinois Senate. Randy brings with him the expertise that we need in Springfield. He's a small business person who understands what the average Illinois family is going through. Right now, our state is too Chicago-centric, supported by legislators and a governor who hails from Chicago, and then they're supported by people in downstate Illinois. And because of that, they maintain their grip on the power of this state with the devastation of average Illinois families. As I said, this is the most important race to us in the Illinois Senate, or at least one of the most important races, because of the strengths that we bring in this area. We know we're running against a long-term incumbent, but the people in this district spoke 2 years ago in the statewide races and supported people of like mind to Randy, as indicated by Jill and Noreen in their strong commitment to a pro-business agenda. The Democrats are passing tax increase after tax increase. We got up to 13 different tax increase proposals by the Chicago Democrats and other Democrats this year. We've got Democratic leaders who want to increase borrowing at monstrous levels in this state to just further drag down our problems. And frankly, we've got disingenuous Democratic leaders who don't support a win-win meaningful pension reform that could help put our state on a better economic track. The truth of the matter is, if we're going to continue to fund transportation, other infrastructure needs, and create a pro-job environment, we're going to need to reconcile our state spending, and we need leaders like Randy who've done that in their own lives and their own businesses to do so. So I'm proud to be here today campaigning with him. I will be back again because, as I said, there's no race more important to us, the Senate Republicans, nor to I think people of Illinois in this upcoming election. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jill and Noreen and let them make some comments, and we'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. And you know, one of the things that we've been most concerned about with Illinois is the loss of jobs. And if you talk to any small business, any large business, they will tell you that they don't think Illinois is a very job-friendly state as far as the environment to create and expand your businesses and the like here. One of the issues that has had issue upon issue is the prevailing wage and bills that have dealt with it. And if you ask any entity of local government, any school board and the like, anybody that is an independent businessman that does construction, they will tell you how detrimental the expansion of prevailing wage has been to, it cripples school districts and it hinders those that can bid on state jobs. And we've seen a great momentum in the state of the Democratic factions to expand, and it's very crippling to small independent businesses in Illinois, and especially West Central Illinois. And that's one of the things that I have stood up against, and my colleagues, but it's one of the things that we've seen over and over, that the Democratic majority has wanted to bring forth many bills that have expanded that. And as I said, it's very crippling to local governments and the like. So that's some of the examples of why we need someone of Randy's character, stature, and conservative goals, and his whole philosophy of how to address creating a thriving business economy in Illinois. So that we want someone that knows how to hire and fire and the like, and to do reforms and make cuts in business in a prioritized way. That's the type of person that we see in Randy, and that's why we're supporting our next Illinois Republican state senator. So I'll turn this over to my other colleague of Brady626, Representative Noreen Hanna.
Thank you, Jill. It's a pleasure to be here and to be joined with my colleague, Representative Jill Tracy, and Senator Brady. It's great to be here and here to support Randy. And if you can see a theme going on here, I think a lot of the discussion that we are having centers around jobs and the Illinois economy, and it's no secret that the Illinois economy is not recovering as we would like to see it recover, and we're not going to have that until we have more jobs. And one of the ways that we create a better job environment we as government officials do not create jobs, but we create an environment for businesses to grow and to prosper in Illinois. And it is past time that we fully address workers' compensation. We touched on workers' compensation last year. It didn't go anywhere near where it should have gone. We have to have causation in the state of Illinois. It's going to be one of the components that we can use as we move forward to create a pro-business environment. We have to couple that, of course, with other incentives, and that is to address our permitting process. It takes over 400 days in the state of Illinois, and in our neighboring states, Iowa, it takes about 40 days to permit a business. So that's another issue that we need to look at. We need someone like Randy that has a background in business, that understands conservative values, that understands the ins and outs of workers' compensation, prevailing wage, and all of the issues that we're dealing with today. So that's the reason I'm pleased to be here and to join you all. Thank you.
Well, one of the other issues, I guess, to talk about, Speaker Madigan just over the weekend was talking more about pension reform and talking about saying downstate and the suburbs need to pay their fair share. How do we fix this problem of the pension inequity dealing with the TRS system?
Let me speak to that. I think that's an important distinction, again, between what the Chicago Democrats and the people who support them want to do, as opposed to us that represent the hardworking people of downstate Illinois. We entered into pension reform negotiations to create a win-win environment. It's unfortunate that the Democratic governors and the Democratic General Assembly have passed budget after budget that didn't solidify and strengthen the pension system. So every year we warn them that they continue down this Ponzi scheme, the pain would be even more devastating. But we did come up with, as negotiations occurred last year and this year, a relatively win-win solution that will strengthen and solidify the pension system. And it wasn't until the waning hours of these negotiations that John Colleton, President of the Senate, Democrat from Chicago, Mike Madigan, Speaker of the House, Democrat from Chicago, Pat Quinn, Governor, Democrat from Chicago, decided that all the risks associated with the unfunded liabilities ought to be thrown onto the property taxpayers in downstate Illinois. Now, let's face it, the people who have earned this pension have paid into the system year in and year out. But it is the Chicago Democrats, the machine that's created by electing Democrats in the state, that has created this shortfall. And now they want to call reform as shifting the liabilities away from the state who created them to taxpayers, property taxpayers in downstate Illinois. We've told them this isn't fair, it isn't right, and we will fight you on this. We have an opportunity to pass meaningful reform in a bipartisan way that will save the taxpayers $60 to $80 billion and create a more solid and stronger system. But this typical Chicago Democratic game is laid at the feet, and these delay tactics are just hurting the state of Illinois. We're not going to stand for it. If the Chicago Democrats wanted to pay on equities, as state resources are used throughout the state for transportation, for infrastructure, for school funding, we'll engage in that debate, and gratefully so, because we need to bring to light those inequities as they exist.
Would you support any sort of transfer to the local school districts on pension costs?
What we've suggested is that school superintendents ought to be responsible, and boards ought to be responsible for future pay raises as they affect pension costs. That's reasonable and responsible. But it's not fair to shift the risks associated with the $80+ billion in unfunded liabilities onto downstate property taxpayers when they paid their fair share. It was the Democrat budgets led from the Chicago Democrats and the Democratic governors that created this problem.
You know, Senator Brady's exactly right. If you look at three issues, major issues that are affecting the state: pensions, workman's compensation reform, or, well, let me go for that. If you just look at the way that the Democrats want to address those problems on the pension reforms, and it's Medicaid reform is what the other one I was referring to, is we wanted to make cuts fairly, prioritize them, and the like. But instead, on pension reform, all of a sudden we get this idea of shifting the cost to local governments. That's not true reform. That's not true cuts. That's just finding someone else to foot the bill and not doing the hard work at hand that needs to be done. Same thing with Medicaid. Instead of making more cuts, they wanted a cigarette tax increase, which may bring forth some money, may not. It just depends. I mean, in our area, people will just go across the state, but that wasn't true reform of making the hard, difficult, prioritized cuts that had to be made. Just find somebody else to pay for it and increase the hospital or decrease the hospital and doctor rates and provider rates. Not true reform. That's the Democratic approach to this. And downstate Republicans stand very strong, and the Republican Party as a whole statewide was for those reforms. Then you look at the workman's compensation. The little tinge that we did last year only touched on raising rates for the doctors to have to pay or the providers. It didn't go to the true cost of workman's compensation, which is causation. That couldn't be touched because of the Democratic approach and the majority. And that's where we distinguish ourselves among those who serve in the Democratic Party in the House and in the Senate. And I think it's glaringly apparent that to reflect the values of West Central Illinois, we need that Republican slant on true reform, true cuts. And that's not what being served. Another issue, concealed carry. Look who defeats concealed carry in this state. It's very important to every person in this region. Number one, pretty much, if you talk to somebody on the street, is what would you like to see Illinois do? Because we're one of the last state that hasn't done some form of concealed carry. President Cullerton does not want concealed carry to pass. And unfortunately, our state senator has voted for that leader, Senator Cullerton, President Cullerton, and will continue to do so. That's why we don't have concealed carry in Illinois, is because the Democratic majority doesn't want it and hasn't allowed it to move forward as it should, irregardless of how